So this is our discussion around CI/CD tracing with Open Telemetry. This started as, I think, a Slack message and turned into an issue that we've been discussing. And Michael, let me say I am super impressed with the issue that you have opened here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can talk through the issue since you've authored it. And then we can take the conversation from there. Does that work for you? Or do you want to share your screen so you can drive and point at things within the issue?
Yes, I think I can go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
And to be honest, I think the issue has gotten a little long, but I think it really needs some like context on which problem are we trying to solve, how can we do it, and what technical background you really need to know about OpenTelemetry and all the tooling involved, because it's a huge ecosystem. And I think there are many things you probably don't need to know when you think about tracing, but in the end, they will help. So like one of the things around CI/CD tracing was, or like, why would I need that? And one of the cases is like, we're not having like the single pipeline with 5 jobs and then everything is fine. But oftentimes we kind of design complex architectures of CI/CD pipelines. We have asynchronous dependencies, we have artifacts, we have duration times, which oftentimes exceed 1 minute, 5 minutes. And then the pipeline is being run and there is no fail fast pattern involved or something like that. So it consumes resources. Resources might consume or do consume cloud resources, compute power, and so on. So it wastes time essentially. And then there is the thing like, how would I approach this? Where should I be looking at getting more efficient with the pipelines? We do have our like pipeline efficiency docs, which started out as from a CI monitoring workshop I did 1 year ago, something around that. And I was like, okay, we might have metrics, which we can solve with the Prometheus exporter from our community. But we also need to like have a deeper look into our pipelines. And there is another issue which is being linked, I think at the bottom somewhere, where we talked about presenting this on the UI or in the UX. So you have your pipelines. Let me see if I can find that quickly. Is it linked? Is it not linked? I think it's not linked yet. But the idea was to have the GitLab pipeline insights. No. Yeah, probably I've searched for it. Pipeline analytics. No, it's not this one, but probably I can find it later on. Is
it an issue about showing the insights of the pipelines within the UI?
Yeah, it has UX elements inside, and there's an animated GIF or a video inside which shows how you can like navigate into a new pipeline view. You can zoom in, you can view the duration to really see like a weather map or heat map, which job, for example, is exceeding a certain limit. So you can like quickly see where the action is going on in your pipeline, and then have a deeper look and say, okay, the job is taking 10 minutes. That's not okay. I want to take action on improving the pipeline, maybe splitting it up, maybe making it non-blocking, and so on.
Okay.
The thing is, like the duration is only one value or one metric you want to be looking in. And oftentimes it's not just like this one job taking 5 minutes or taking quite a while, but it can be an event of things or a timeline of things influencing this overall behavior of a slow pipeline or of a pipeline which doesn't scale that good or consumes too many resources. And the idea around tracing is that you basically define a span which has a start window, a start timestamp and an end timestamp. And you, for example, measure the duration, of course, inside, but you can also like enrich that with more metadata, similar to logging in a specific sense, but put into these span blocks. And there is not only one span in a trace, but this can be like a multitude of linked spans. I don't know, did I put I think I didn't put a picture in there. But yeah, we have more like insights with tracing into that. And if I change that picture into saying, okay, I'm treating, for example, the job start and the job end as the bigger span I want to look into, but I could also be like looking into, and this needs the GitLab runner insights then, when the job starts, when the Docker pull starts, when the preparation for the Git sub modules start and end, and to just provide a more fine granular insight what's happening on the runner side, but also what's happening on the job server side. For example, uploading the artifacts or the caches or something like that. So to see the background infrastructure, but also have the possibility to instrument our own jobs, maybe. And this is something which is linked with Honeycomb's build event over here. This is, oops, this was not intended. We have build events, which is basically a CLI which gets called, and then you start a span, you end a span, and it communicates with Honeycomb then. Embedding that into CI/CD scripts is a little cumbersome in that regard, that you need to have many environment variables and so on. So from a user perspective, it's a little complicated to get started. Still, the tool it's, I would say, straightforward to use when you dive into it. But again, it doesn't feel out of the box. And it's probably easier, at least for me as a consumer, as a user, to just say, hey, I want to enable CI/CD tracing, or configure that from a CI/CD template. And then then I get an insight. And depending on how I configured it, let's just say the tool basically sends the traces to a backend, and then in a front end I can view and analyze this. In the best possible scenario, I as a user don't need to understand what's happening back there. But in the first iteration and the first MVC, it should focus on OpenTelemetry as a framework, as a tool, which allows us to define where to send them the traces, like using a defined backend, which is shown in the picture. So OpenTelemetry acts as a collector service where you send the traces to, and it stores them, or it allows to store them in a backend, which is not OpenTelemetry itself. It can be Jaeger tracing, it can be Grafana Tempo, it can be something else for tracing, a vendor providing this. I don't know, maybe, I think Splunk has something in that regard. So there are many different vendors also involved in the OpenTelemetry project. And the idea is to provide a generic interface merged from Open Tracing and Open Sensors into OpenTelemetry, and store all these traces there. OpenTelemetry has another specification coming up for metrics and also for logs. So it's not just like OpenTelemetry just for tracing, but this is like out of the scope. It's just additional information that OpenTelemetry covers more than just traces.
Gotcha. So you're thinking, I mean, I think that the problem is well-founded. We see, based on what we've heard from customers about pipelines, when pipelines get too long or they unexpectedly change, they want to understand why. And we don't provide great visibility into that today out of the box. So I think that the problem is it's a problem space that's ripe for improvement. It sounds like the MVC then would be you can enable span or tracing within your GitLab CI/CD pipeline and configure a place to go collect it. All we're going to do is say at every step within the jobs, we're going to start and end a trace just as part of the pipeline run for you, so that then you can go look at those metrics. You can then leverage GitLab to do that within our Jaeger implementation or Prometheus if you wanted. And then a further, another iteration on that might be a not free feature set that allows you to visualize that alongside like pipeline editor or somewhere in that experience. You can see, hey, this is taking a long time, either at the last run, or you could start to dig in and say, hey, now historically, this job is taking longer, this pipeline is taking longer, whatever it might be. Is that what you're thinking? I think I kind of blew that up to 30,000 feet really fast, but from an MVC to where this might go vision-wise, is that described? Or did I understand what you're looking for?
Yeah, that describes that very well. I tried to break it up as in many parts as possible, because I know that we really want to have like the fancy web interface, but we can really, or we should really focus on using what's already there. And oftentimes it's also the case that, for example, someone already has Jaeger tracing in the environment, their backend and everything else. So we want to do the integration. And when I saw the Datadog CI visibility, I think, the Datadog integration a while ago, I was inspired by that and saying I want to really like look into what is there. And I think I linked the diff just because I wanted to see how it works, so not just how it's defined, but where are the timing points in the CI/CD pipeline. So within our code, within GitLab's code, what exactly happens in the background? So which events are there and so on. And from there I was like, hey, if we do that for Datadog, we can also do that for example, for using the Open Telemetry integration, or something which I found today, actually. I need to scroll down a little. I've seen at KubeCon that CNCF started cloud events, which is something around a common way of describing event data also for CI/CD. So this could be something outside of the issue which I created for Open Telemetry, but keeping it in mind that every workflow in our CI/CD pipelines being executed either in Ruby or in Go, there could be like a tracing window or tracing information, but it could also be like metrics or events or something like that. And this is what it touches base with everything. But to really scope it down, I would want us to add and these are like the proposal. First off, get a feel how the Open Telemetry Ruby client works. So this is like the SDK. Also have a look into the Go SDK for the runner components. And then follow what is already there, what has been added, for example, with Datadog and the specific implementations. And based on that, use a demo environment around Jaeger tracing as a backend and Open Telemetry as the collector. And I found that there is like a Kubernetes operator, for example, which can be used. And the minimal change for configuring this would be like a config setting, which allows us to specify host port authorization. And I think you need to specify the backend as well, but I didn't really dive into it yet. It's like more of a high-level idea. This is how I would propose the steps. And when this is working and we can see success by pulling in the Jaeger UI for CI/CD tracing, and for example, compare it with the Datadog integration, compare it with other CI/CD tools, on the market, how they solve the problem. And then from there, we can see whether we build a UI integration, allow to add, for specific like monitoring, observability in regards of tracing analytics, tracing insights, something which is then on the enterprise tier, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But this is bound to, hey, let's make this work now. And since it is groundwork and also like combining existing resources, also usable for a single developer, I was proposing it for the free tier, for the core version, and based on that, and hopefully increased adoption of the feature and gathering feedback, we can build out more features for customers, dashboards, CI/CD dashboards, and so on.
Yeah, I like leveraging this for free, saying you can turn it on and specify a collector, or by default, even we could make our Jaeger tracing implementation be the collector. If we go the tracing route, I'm going to do the product manager thing and say, what other ways can we solve this problem outside of tracing? Like if we stepped back from open telemetry and said, I don't have insights into my pipelines, what is another way we could solve for that problem today?
Yeah, one thing is, or like how when I prepared the CI pipeline monitoring webcast actually last year, I was like, yeah, we totally have all the tools and all the metrics and everything is there. And then I learned we don't have that much. We have certain metrics in our PostgreSQL backend, but this is rather expensive to store, and accessing these metrics is expensive. So when I found the pipeline, the GitLab CI pipeline exporter from our community, and this is also linked in the pipeline efficiency docs. It was like, okay, we have something around that. So it's like, how to say that, we want to have self-contained monitoring out inside in GitLab. It should be enabled by default. I think currently it's not enabled by default. And on the other side, we also want to provide an interface for users who have existing monitoring and observability solutions. So like exposing the pipeline metrics from /metrics on gitlab.com somehow would also be nice, also for self-managed installations. Right now, this isn't possible. The thing which is possible is to query the REST API, which then does SQL queries in the backend, and have a daemon running in front, which calculates the metrics in the Prometheus format. And this is being done in the pipeline exporter, which essentially, when I started using it, I think it was just proposing metrics for jobs and pipelines. Meanwhile, there has been added support for environments, specific filtering, and much more. So it's a really nice project, and I don't want to like close it down and just make it available in GitLab itself. But getting inspired from it, providing more cached metrics, faster access to the performance values, could provide us with the possibility to have something like this in an abstracted way in the default pipeline overview, so that we can, for example, see maybe with like the smaller bullets or something, hey, there is like a pattern of failed jobs, or hey, there's a pattern of flaky unit tests. I think we have some sort of this detection for this already, but more in a way that when I navigate into a project, let me see if I can like quickly find one. I did a pipeline efficiency workshop a while ago, and I started playing And when I, for example, just navigate into the pipeline overview, is there something which is usable? Yeah, maybe let's use a different one. We do have, I did a workshop on Saturday around CI/CD, and we had this pipeline. Yeah, this looks a little more interesting. So when I like have this overview, it would be interesting to not only hover over that and see the dependencies, but also like get a pop-up, for example, for this job took 1 minute and this job took 20 seconds. And just because there is like a default threshold of 40 seconds, the 60 seconds one turns red automatically. And I can change the threshold, for example, which is sort of like, it's a little do-it-yourself monitoring, but it allows you to see or to filter visually the duration of jobs. And like the duration is an indicator of how long the job took. It's not really a root cause analysis, because it could be network dependencies, or latencies, it could be Docker pull is taking too long because the image is 10 gigabytes and much, much more. But really getting a high level indication of, yeah, this actually looks good, but the duration is a little off here. Or in the past, this job failed 3 out of 10 times. Having the detail here and not having to navigate into analytics CI/CD, because it's interesting over there as well. Don't get me wrong on that, but it's a different scope.
Yeah, being able to, to see from your branch, like here's all of the pipeline executions within this branch. Here's how it compares to your target branch if you have an MR open. Being able to see the history, being able to set that threshold, being able to then dig in and say, this job, like here's how the job has changed. Maybe those are contributing factors, dig in then from there to tests if it's a job in the test stage, back into the CI/CD analytics. I think all of that is super interesting as future iterations. That makes sense.
If I move into like the merge request view, if there's, for example, a deployment into a staging environment and I can measure the metrics, so I know we have the possibility to collect metric reports ourselves. It's there, but the possibility to have this in a more automated way. So it's not just the possibility to add something, but there is automated collection, maybe of like the job duration or detecting something, and having this presented somehow. I don't know how it exactly fits the UI or the UX, because the merge request has a lot of information already. But for example, if the pipeline would be failing, it would be super helpful to see, hey, the pipeline failed. There were like 6 jobs and the duration was XYZ. So to have, normally I'm looking into a pipeline when something is failing. So I really want to have like a call to action of, hey, what's next when you start debugging this pipeline? Where should you be looking at? Should you be open the pipeline editor? Should you be open the pipeline view? And like improving the navigation. Currently, it's a long way to really get into the job and see why it failed, or see how long it took, for example. I totally understand that you don't want to always look into a merge request, but to see overall performance dashboard. But this is more like the infrastructure or ops dashboard for CI/CD, where you can, and this is me making something up, or maybe it's not me making something up. It's actually like the overview similar to Grafana, seeing jobs or patterns which have a long execution time. And if tracing exists, you click on it and you can immediately have like a pane being opened, which shows you on the right-hand side, hey, this is like the trace of this job. So you can see, okay, the duration is my service level objective. Let's call it like being the SLO. It should be not more than 1 minute, but if exceeds 1 minute, we mark it as red or as failed, and then you can start investigating and not just like read the job logs and try to figure out how long it took and manually calculate the steps from Docker pull to actually executing a script, but have this in a visual way. So this would be my dream of analyzing this.
So that would be, like you said, it's more of an operations view. If you're the DevOps team, or you're like our engineering productivity team, monitoring a pipeline over time, seeing when the pipeline starts taking much longer than it had been historically, quickly being able to diagnose within that what are like some of our top contributing factors. Is it, oh, we just have Docker slowness right now, or these jobs changed, and after they changed, their duration took a long time. Those would be some of the outcomes that we'd want to drive with a view like that, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And I also don't want to like separate the teams and make them silos again, which we often see when like, hey, the CI/CD pipeline doesn't work, and like opening a ticket for the infrastructure team and hey, fix that, and they come back and say, yeah, but actually it's the pipeline configuration which makes it slow. It's up to you, and then you play ping pong on the teams.
Yeah.
Which is not efficient. So the possibility to fix a pipeline should be doable by everyone, and this is not limited or scoped to a developer or to ops or to DevOps. A product manager, designer, everyone who is working with the pipeline should be able to diagnose the problem, and with documented instructions or runbooks or something else, being able to fix it. Because when the pipeline is failing, and you really want to test some or use the review apps, for example, for testing UX, you cannot use that, and it blocks your workflows. It's frustrating, and you always have to ask someone else for help. But what if no one is available? It's like, hey, I need to start reverse engineering the source code or the pipeline code now. It works, but it's not much fun. And given that there could be some sort of AI involved, which tells you we detected the pipeline duration is going up always on a Monday from 9 to 5, maybe you want to have a look into that.
Yeah, that sounds similar to so some of those insights from within the issue. There's an interesting article from the Slack engineering team talking about how they were instrumenting some of their CI/CD pipelines and how they just made them a little bit better, or a lot better in some cases.
Yeah, the thing is, and I'm trying to find my own talks. I do have a talk around efficient second ops pipelines, but probably I should be just.
So I want to get back a little bit to why we would build this ourselves and not promote an open source project or partner with a Honeycomb or someone like that and build out the minimal and then stop. How are we uniquely positioned to provide value to GitLab users within GitLab with functionality like this? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think the first thing is, even though it looks nice to have that, or to have your own like check GitLab in an Nagios monitoring system or something like that, it's extra work. If you're a single if you're a single engineering group, or if you're like the DevOps engineer on your team, and you also need to do the monitoring, but just for GitLab, or you want to use what's already there, I think it's better to have it integrated. And oftentimes, at least that's me, I don't want to understand yet another different tool which has a different configuration syntax. I probably want to have it like out of the box, or as a cloud service or something else. So I changed my opinion from I'm hosting everything myself, rather to let's pay someone to do it for me, because I don't want to learn. Yeah, it's super interesting. If you're familiar with it, and if you want to do it, PromQL and Prometheus and Grafana are amazing tools, but still it needs maintenance, it needs knowledge, especially when this side breaks. Not the CI/CD pipeline breaks, but the monitoring breaks. Mm-hmm. So the kind of additional maintenance, and not just having it inside Omnibus or inside the Helm charts and everything works out of the box, even though it's not just like you have an empty dashboard, but you have predefined example dashboards which come out of the box, which would be super nice. So the pipeline exporter as a project now provides example dashboards similar to, for example, a Prometheus operator, which installs a full stack with Prometheus, Grafana dashboards, and so on. The thing is, when you do it on your own, like do it yourself monitoring, you don't know which metrics are important. So the best practice, the opinion from our engineers, from our product teams, and also using or dog fooding how our infrastructure team at SREs use that on a daily basis, because CI/CD on GitLab.com can also be like slow, and you need the insights. I think it's better to have it like in the product, and not somewhere written down. You need to select this metric, and by the way, this one. But we can like leverage the knowledge we have in production, and also make the product better.
Yeah. If you're that person who notices the pipeline is slowed down, seeing this trace spans or the metrics or whatever it might be within the same tool, versus now I need to go log into other vendor. What happens if that vendor is down? That just adds complexity to trying to solve your problem, because now you have to wait for them to be back up, et cetera, et cetera. So okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I like we can predefine some dashboards and be opinionated about what a good pipeline looks like, or what things you should pay attention to within your pipeline, what might be contributing factors to it slowing down. I think that there's appetite for that, especially for those folks who are single engineering teams, or there's the DevOps person on the team or within engineering, or even worse, that DevOps person left. I've talked to a few customers like that lately who know they want to build out more functionality, but don't have the experience. So that's giving them that tooling within is super interesting. Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, and now I found the slide and the issues, or the epics, which I can then link to. Just let me quickly share the presentation with you in Slack. The idea is like the animated GIF is something I stole from or borrowed from the epic Vitika created, so that you can really like see the timeline of the traces or the spans or the jobs, something which also gives you a health indicator. If this continues like this, the pipeline will be broken all the time. Something which puts the visual aspect also with the cake diagram over here, which is something I think we saw with GitHub Actions. And make like the pipeline view the one you really want to be looking at when debugging a problem, and not having to navigate into the job details all the time, because the job log it's interesting and it's nicely formatted, but it's too much. We really want to condense down the level of detail, and Is there anything else I wanted to show on this slide? Potentially not. The other thing I'm like thinking about is how, when we add CI/CD tracing and CI/CD insights, how can we like build something like quality gates with Captain or something else into CI/CD? So like using a mechanism of saying it's not only CI/CD as the framework, as the tooling which we want to monitor or observe, but we also leverage that into, hey, the deployment doesn't perform that good. We provide out of the box possibility to monitor the deployment, and when there's a low is not right, and so on. So I'm not talking about duplicating Captain's work here, but just having this in mind, that we also need to look beyond our own ecosystems and insights. But what else comes to mind? And when something around metrics is failing, maybe we do a rollback of the deployment, something like that. But this, I think this goes a little beyond the scope of pipeline insights.
Yeah.
But it's still an interesting idea.
I think the release team and the monitor team would be super interested in that, though, of how do we extend potentially some of those things so that you can look at tracing data as part of your deployment and see. And I've talked to Kevin about that, of how does it compare to production if we're, or compare to test data or previous production data, if traces are now different in a meaningful way, and doing an auto rollback based on that, things like that.
Yeah, and then it's again, and this is me thinking about many topics. You have traces, you have logs, you have metrics, and maybe you want to do profiling or continuous profiling, things we have seen with polar signals now, or I think it's called parser, parser.dev. Is it the domain? Yeah, so they open sourced the tooling or the tool stack around continuous profiling. I didn't try it out yet, but having the possibility what polar signals provides. Okay, there's a new website. I was actually like looking for the graphs. So you have like sort of a flame graph of the call stack of your application. This is very like, it's based on the application itself. So you really want to preload something or see which sys calls are being performed by the application, or which internal function it calls very often, and the function takes 1 second, it's fine, but it takes 5 seconds, it's bad. But this is also an interesting like idea around, you deploy not only production and you profile your production environment, but what if I deploy my merge request into a staging environment and everything gets monitored inside and profiled, and then I can compare a merge request, which is essentially like a Git commit, and I can diff those things, and I can compare everything which might have had an influence. And one of the examples I experienced myself in the past was, let me see if I can quickly find another talk of mine, which I will be talking about all the DevOps this week too, is so we were building a daemon written in C++, and for some reason the API frontend was not fast enough. So we thought about moving from threading to coroutines, lightweight stacks, basically, lightweight threads, basically. The problem was that the memory was increased by using those, and we also had some crashes which we couldn't really detect over time. And by like having something inside CI/CD and developing the feature and deploying it and detecting those regressions beforehand would have been really, really nice, but we didn't have that back then. So we debugged for half a year or something with bisecting or bisecting the release and the next major release, which were like 1,000 commits.
Oof.
And every single commit was deployed to production, ran for 3 days. On a production in a production environment, ran for 3 days, and then you continued searching for the problem. And after a while, you figured out, hey, this is the commit where it breaks. Yeah, but if you apply the fix to it, it doesn't work. So if we would have detected that earlier in the process of, hey, we're adding coroutines now, and it's amazing, detecting those regressions or performance problems earlier in the process before actually releasing that to customers who call you and say, please fix that now and yesterday, and you're saying, hey, I have no idea what to look at. This is something which plays into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely, and that resonates with me as we've looked at how do we extend the performance testing category and testing so that you could start to set thresholds, you could start to track things over time so you can find those problems sooner. Integrating more, signals into that is super interesting as well.
And again, it's like the problem of this issue or this feature request is really scoped to tracing, but it's like building Lego bricks. One ties in another. We have different tools available. We need to like choose what is already there, and then collect also feedback from our wider community and customers, so that we also know their use cases. Because I can like source from my 10 years or 20 years of development experience, but there are so many like challenges out there and different things in the programming language, and you know that from unit testing, it's challenging to find like the defined format.
Yeah.
For CI/CD, I think we can like for our own pipeline and runners, we can go our own way because we collect that and we have that available. When it comes into SLO collection, quality gates, profiling, and other stuff, we can look into ways making it easier for our community to use it.
Yeah.
Provide examples, use cases, demo videos, and so on. But yeah, it's this is like me or this is the 3-year plan, or I don't know. It's an arbitrary number of years it will take to really achieve that everything is lovable.
Yeah. I like the starting point though of your pipeline. You want more insights into your pipeline. You could go instrument it yourself and get the data out. There's a project out there for it. It works for GitLab, but you want more insights than what it provides. You want them within the same tool. You don't want to stand up and host this thing yourself. So if we just start with, we're providing data that you could point at a collector, and if we can then integrate with or point that at our own Jaeger collector or a Prometheus collector, so you can see it within your within GitLab itself, still all within the free tier. I think it's a great start. And we can go from there and see what is super interesting, or what is interesting, what do we find interesting, talk to engineering productivity, work them into it, or loop them in, see how they're finding it useful, and then expand from that. Does that sound as reasonable as a MVC of sorts? I like the way that you've broken it down. I think the progression of steps makes sense. Would want to definitely get some engineering folks looking at it and poking at it a little bit. But I feel like the problem is, it's a good problem to try to go solve and to tackle this.
Yeah, I think we should be looking into tracing because everyone is looking right now. So the technology is evolving, and there are possibilities to provide our feedback to the Open Telemetry project and to the cloud native community. So with metrics and the I've linked the epic now, which proposes the views and the things which we already have. This is a separate problem to solve. So we have metrics in our backend. We want to present that in the UX and the pipeline duration, but this can be tackled, I think, in a separate way. The only difference, or the only thing which has it in common, is measuring the overall job duration, for example, because a job duration can also be a tracing span.
Mhm.
This is like an overlap, so it might make sense to have the same engineering teams work on this, or
Yeah.
at least like sync on this. But from like the MVC standpoint, you can totally start adding open telemetry into the Ruby code now. Then as a second step, look into the runner code, for example, see how to communicate, how to like sync that even. But it's like the separate step. First things first would be just to be honest, I have no idea how it's implemented, the Ruby code, which executes a pipeline or schedules the pipeline execution, and try to build in the collector code.
Mhm.
I did that a while ago with Jaeger tracing and C++, and I think it's I know I'm bad at estimating hours. I don't do that, but I would say it's an interesting technology, and we should be looking into it. And if I can help, like giving thoughts or giving directions, I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah. Well,
But in the end, I'm hoping that our engineers will take the lead on this and just add it.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I think the then next steps is probably create an MVC issue to add the telemetry. We might turn this issue into an epic and go from there. I think that's what I would describe as next steps.
Yeah.
We might do just a little bit more validation around the problem space to make sure that where we start is the right place. But just getting job duration and doing it from spans might be interesting, as well as getting the spans, being able to collect them somewhere so that you can visualize it yourself. I think that would be a good first step. Like a first good outcome, rather, not a first step, but the outcome we would want for users.
Yeah.
Okay.
Measuring or tracing what we already have in our code. And at the later point, we can say we want to make it like a user function in CI/CD.
Gotcha.
So you have like ! trace as the YAML function, or I don't know, no idea about the implementation. But then think about how to solve it on the runner side to trace a script execution, for example.
Yeah.
But this is beyond the scope of the first success now.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else you want to cover before we wrap up? I think we're getting close to time.
I think I probably have too many ideas, but I really want to make us focus on getting started and having the first MVC in hopefully soon the future, and also see what things we can reuse. Things maybe it makes sense that you have a talk with Andrew Newdigate from our infrastructure team. He has knowledge around open telemetry as well. So yeah, just collecting more ideas for the future, but also like finding a way to get started now or in the coming release planning.
Yep, that makes
milestones.
Sense. Yeah, we'll evaluate this with the existing priorities for the upcoming milestones and see where it fits in. But I think that this is something worthwhile to dig into a little bit more, for sure.
And last thought, we can create content and blog posts around it, sharing our insights, our learnings around it, and engage more with the cloud native community in that regard.
Yep, agreed. Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. This has been fantastic to talk through. I appreciate your insights and all of the content that you've put into this. into this issue. It's a lot to chew through, but it's super valuable.
Thanks for the discussion today, and I'm looking forward to build something and building awesome things.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one. Cheers.
You too. Bye.